It's time to take off your clothes, enjoy clothes-free living, and join us for Naked, Nudist, and Naturist.
Welcome to Naked, Nudist, and Naturist, the show that celebrates clothes-free living for all. I'm your host, Frank Stone.
And I'm your correspondent, Lisa Monroe, and I'll be reporting on all things within the Naturist community. So it's time to get naked and join us.
And enjoy clothes-free living on Naked, Nudists, and Naturists. Well, greetings and welcome into Naked, Nudist, and Naturist, episode 14 today. We are glad you are with us. Come on in. Not only is the water fine, but I have steaks on the grill, some vegetables on the grill as well. We have a table off to the side filled with various fruit plates. You can help yourself there. Some cheese and crackers on the table off to the left. It's a beautiful sunshiny day. It just begs for you to have your clothes off and come on over, have a little lunch, stay for dinner, do some swimming, definitely get some sun, and let's enjoy each other's company today on Naked, Nudist, and Naturist, episode 14. Enjoying the clothes-free living life for all of the right reasons, and we hope that you are too. Well, on today's show, of course, we will talk to our weekly correspondent, Lisa Monroe, and today I'm going to give her a quiz. Admittedly, it's not the greatest quiz of all time, but I found it online, so we'll give it a shot to determine whether Lisa Monroe is a naturist / nudist / naked person or not. This quiz will determine that, so you'll want to stick around for that. We'll also have part 2 of my interview with the terrific author, Will Forrest. He writes naturist fiction. We want you to get all of his books. Very well written. He's a college professor. He's done a lot of writing in his life. Not sure if you know this or not, and maybe you don't, not being in the college professorial world. But to get multiple degrees, to get your doctorate, to become a professor, you do a lot of writing. Writing on top of writing on top of writing. There's no way around it. And so Will Forrest had already done a bunch of writing in his life before he turned to naturist fiction. So he was ready to go. And he has a number of books out there we want you to check out. So part 2 today of my interview with Will Forrest. As a reminder, we give you a brand new show every Saturday morning, 6 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time. You can set your clock to it. You can take it to the bank. Not that there are a lot of banks open at 6 a.m. Eastern Time on a Saturday morning, but you know what I mean. We're going to give you a show, a brand new show every Saturday morning, 6 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time, posted immediately to Spotify. And then eventually it gets to Apple Podcasts, it gets to Google Podcasts, it gets to Amazon Music, Amazon / Audible. We are not in control of when it gets there. Sometimes it gets there right away. We post it on Spotify, Spotify shoots it out, the others accept it right away. Sometimes it takes a few hours. So if you go to one of those other platforms other than Spotify, and it's not there at 6 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time, you'll know why, but guaranteed it'll be on Spotify at 6 a.m. Eastern Time every Saturday morning. The only time we will not have a show is around holiday time. We are planning on taking the Thanksgiving Saturday off, as well as 2 Saturdays over the Christmas break. So it'll be Christmas and New Year's. We'll take those 2 Saturdays off as well. Those are the plans. Now, we might end up doing shows, but right now we are planning to have those 3 Saturdays off. Otherwise, between now and the end of 2023, we'll be here every Saturday for you with a brand new show. And then after those 2 weeks off in December and early January, we will kick back up a brand new show every Saturday morning. We encourage you to visit our website for further information. Easy to remember, nakednudistsandnaturists.com. And you'll find a lot of information there, a link to every single episode. And you can also leave some comments on there that we like to read and will occasionally read on the air. You can also send us an email. We're a little skittish about email right now, but send it and we will respond. nakedforevermore@gmail.com. That's nakedforevermore@gmail.com. The best way to reach us is through Twitter. We're on there as well. Just type in the search bar, Naked Nudists and Naturists, and our page will come up, and you can send us a direct message there, and we will respond. Whether it is our administrative assistant, Jennifer Hill, or myself, one of us will respond, and we will engage with you as long and as often as you wish to do so about the joys of naturism, nudism, clothes-free living for all of the right reasons. The best way is on Twitter, but we put email out there and website out there. And you can even leave comments on Spotify. In fact, before we get to Lisa Monroe's weekly report and part 2 of my interview with Will Forrest, I want to read some of the comments that we have received on Spotify and on our website. Every week when we put a show out there on Spotify, there's a place for you to leave comments, and we also try to include a poll, a question of the week. We don't always do that, but please check it out. We'd like to hear your responses. And I have not done this before. We've always read Twitter comments and email comments, not read the Spotify comments. So some of these will go back in history just a little bit. For example, on episode 10, the question was, is there any specific topic that you want us to address on Naked Nudists and Naturists? And a couple of the comments are as follows. One person wrote in and said, what about how to bring up the topic with other people who are not nudists? And I will address that in 1 minute. Great question. Great question. We might need to follow that up by covering it as a topic on this show. Another comment, finding or meeting other naturist singles online when most groups are typically against it with their own groups. Also, while avoiding swinger groups and sites. We just want family-minded people being the goal to find online. So let's talk about the first one, bringing up the topic of naturism, nudism with other people who are not nudists. There is no terrific one answer for this. It's very likely you have already been in that scenario. You've informed somebody, by the way, I live clothes-free for all of the right reasons. And it might be a sibling, it might be your parents, it might be your spouse, it might be people at work, some friends who didn't know that about you. And I already know what the reactions are. They're a little bit mixed, but some are, you what? Are you crazy? Are you one of those? Other people might respond with, oh, well, I guess you're having fun this weekend with a lot of people. Both inappropriate responses, but it's inappropriate because they don't know what it's all about. And I guess that would be your time to educate them. When they look at you kind of funny and think that you're a swinger and having wild sexual parties every weekend simply because you live clothes-free, that's the time to jump in and say, no, it's not about that. It's about freeing up the mind, the body, the soul, the spirit, mentally, emotionally. Literally everything under the sun is gone in terms of barriers, and we can live our lives barrier-free. And then you can give an example or two, how you used to be when you wore clothes 25/8, and how you are now when you have your clothes off as often as is legally and appropriately possible. Those who live the clothes-free life know exactly what I'm talking about. We have listeners who are just trying it now for the first time. We have listeners who have been naturist nudists for more than 50 years, and we have everything in between. So if you are a naturist nudist living clothes-free, you already know what I mean. Based on what I just said, it removes all barriers, and you just feel better about yourself and about life in general. So if you're going to tell somebody, hey, I'm a naturist, I'm a nudist, I live clothes-free, I'm naked all the time in my house, be ready for a funny look, maybe an offhanded comment, but don't let it go. That's when you dive in and say, hey, why don't you try it? I tried it, and I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life. As far as meeting other people, naturist singles online, it's a little bit difficult. I will admit that. A lot of people will go online and identify as a naturist or a nudist, and really they're just looking for a one-night stand, and they use naturist as their ticket in. So you want to be careful about that. Of course, there are signs. If you go online and start chatting with somebody, hey, I'm a naturist, how about you? And they say, yeah, this is a great way to live. And 3 or 4 sentences in, they say, hey, why don't you send me a picture, baby? Well, you're probably not dealing with a true naturist, nudist. You're dealing with somebody who likes to see naked people. Nothing wrong with that, but if you're looking for a true naturist or nudist, that's probably your sign to say, yeah, I probably ought to duck out of this conversation and move on to the next person. Very difficult to find, I will admit, online, but you will find them. They are out there. You're hearing my voice right now. I'm one of them. You are one of them. So that's two of us. And there are many more out there who truly embrace nudism, naturism for all of the right reasons because they know what it does for the mind, body, soul, spirit, mentally, and physically, as well as emotionally. Way back on episode 4, the question was, what did you think about this episode? And a gentleman wrote in, it's hard to advocate for naturism in shopping centers in Australia, America, or Canada if the advocate for clothing equality can't do it with a straight face. And I don't remember episode 4 for exactly to what that comment is referencing, but it makes a very good point. If you are a naturist and you're kind of making a joke about it when you're explaining it to other people, yeah, they won't take you seriously. I'm guessing that is his point. When you talk about naturism, nudism, talk about it as though it's a big deal, because it is. We had a poll on episode 10. Do you live clothes-free inside of your home? 98.2% of the respondents said yes. 1.8% said no. There was no space for comments within that poll. It was just basically a yes or a no. I love that 98.2% are living clothes-free in their home. No safer place to do it. Curious about the 1.8% that do not. Maybe they cannot. But if they could and they don't, I'd like to know why not. But it's great to know that most people are living clothes-free within their own homes. And way back on episode 2, the question was, did you enjoy today's episode of Naked, Nudist, and Naturist while living your best naturist life? And obviously that means, were you nude while listening to the Nude Show? And everybody said yes, except for the people, this was an option. I was at work or driving. We had 17% say that. And basically, no, I couldn't be naked while listening because I was driving or I was at work. Otherwise, the other 83%, yeah, they were tuned in while clothes-free. Well, better way to go. We get that comment a lot from a number of people who write in that they're always clothes-free while listening to our show. Now, are they already clothes-free when they hit the play button? Or do they say, hey, it's time to fire up Frank and Lisa for Naked, Nudist, and Naturist. I'd better get my clothes off. I don't know the answer to that question. It's just great to know that we have this community here that we've established, that was long established before we came along. The naturism community. I've been a part of a number of communities in life. Business, work, neighborhoods, cities, state, federal, just different communities you're involved in as you go through life. I've not found one that even comes close to the naturism community in terms of what it brings to the table for everybody. There's something about a naturist / nudist. Remember, I use those terms interchangeably. So if I say nudist without naturist or naturist without nudist, don't be offended. I just use them as the same term to make it simpler here. But there's something about the naturism, nudism community. People seem to care about each other a whole lot more. Friendlier, legitimately friendlier, not fake or phony. Hey, good to see you, buddy, when they're thinking, I want to get away from this guy or gal, or hey, what can I get out of this person? I get that a lot in the textile world. People are really nice to my face because they want something from me. The naturism community, nobody wants anything other than to get to know me as a person and to get to know other people and to help them. If you've ever been to a textile event, and I know you have because that's our society, let's say it's a big party, 100 people show up. You'll find little pockets of 2 or 3 people here, 2 or 3 people there, maybe 5 over there. A naturist, nudist gathering. You might see some of that, but you also might see all 100 people together in the same room, just enjoying the company of other people. Just a great place to be. the naturist community functions, gatherings. So we hope you find them, and we encourage you to do so. And if you can't find one, start your own. Invite some people over and just have a nice naturist night. Maybe have some pizza and some soft drinks outside. Well, we are glad that you are with us. You're listening to Naked, Nudist, and Naturist, episode 14 today. Remember, a brand new show every Saturday morning, 6 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time. We love being with you. We love the fact that you are with us and writing to us and listening to us and sharing the joys of naturism, nudism, being naked, being clothes-free for all of the right reasons. We're just glad that we can share that with you and that you share it with us. Well, as you can tell by the music that has been playing underneath the last few moments, it is time for our weekly correspondent, Lisa Monroe. So let's bring in our weekly correspondent, Lisa Monroe. She brings great information on the naturist, nudist, naked community. Lisa Monroe, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Frank. I'm doing terrific. How about you?
Not bad at all. Have you had
Good.
a terrific clothes-free week, I hope?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's the best way to be. And fortunately, was able to be naked for quite a bit of the last couple of days. So that's
Oh,
not a bad
good.
thing.
That's good. Now, last time we talked about that realtor and the naturist next door having naked parties, and they could only
Hmm.
be seen if they used a trampoline. Well,
Yeah.
hello. That's not happened to you this week. No one's complained, I hope.
No, no. Unfortunately, no one's complained. Oh, well,
Yeah.
that's a two-edged sword. If they complain, well, anyway, we won't go there.
I guess either would be bad if they complained that you're
Yeah,
naked outside, or
yeah.
if they set up some bleachers right outside your fence. That would be equally as bad, but for different reasons.
I'm thinking the complaints are probably going to be more common, but you never know.
I just haven't. Wouldn't that be funny? Not funny, but wild if your neighbor came over. Oh, I bought a set of bleachers from an old baseball field. I'll be putting them up next to your pool. Thank you very much. That would be a little bit weird.
That would be extremely weird, and that would probably be the time when I want to, instead of the realtor. That was a material and adverse event,
That's,
according to what the realtor said in that other
that's
segment
right.
we did. Yes, no, I think that would definitely be a call for the officer. Could you please come over
Yeah.
here, please?
Let's take these bleachers apart here. All right. Well, I have a survey for you today. And the survey was taken offline, one of those survey monkey things they have out
Oh,
there on every topic under the sun.
yes,
And it has to do, it's allegedly supposed to help you or whoever's listening decide if they're really a naturist or a nudist. And I use those terms interchangeably. I don't, I'm a naturist by golly, and if you're a nudist, you're a fool, or I'm a nudist by golly, and if you're a nature, no, I just don't do that. We're just enjoy the clothes free life for all the right reasons. I guess that's how I look at it. And I know people have their thoughts and opinions other ways, and I don't disparage them. It's whatever you are, just do it. As long as you live in the clothes free life, it's fine. So the survey had to do with to help you decide. Are you a naturist? Are you a nudist? Or do you like living clothes free? And the first one is a fairly simple question: would you describe yourself as a naturist or a nudist? Yes or no?
yes.
Yeah. I guess if the answer is no, it's time to quit the survey after that point.
I was going to say we might need to think of another career here or something, but anyway.
Do you actively walk around the house? And I don't know what they mean by actively. I guess they just mean often and regularly. Do you actively walk around the house in the nude?
Yes.
Okay, now we will not disclose details about your personal life, but if you had a boyfriend or a husband in the home with you, would you want him to walk around in the nude and basically be nude all the time as well?
Yes.
Okay.
These are easy.
Would you, let's say you're not married right now. Let's say you
Mhm.
don't have a boyfriend right now. Would you make that mandatory? Like, hi, my name is Lisa. I'd love to have lunch with you, but only if you promise to get naked if the relationship goes anywhere. Would that be part of your profile on one of those apps?
No, it wouldn't.
Just kidding. Just having a little fun today. Uh, but that happens a lot though. People get married, then the naturist nudist thing comes out, and the other one, wait, well, you didn't tell me this before. No, you got to keep your clothes on. That can be a problem. So maybe it should be discussed up front.
I think it should definitely be discussed up front.
Yeah, not necessarily on the app at the the dating app,
No. No.
but and maybe not at the first time you go out, but as things begin to progress. Oh, by the way, I live clothes free, and hope you don't mind, and have a discussion before it. I guess before you fall in love and get married.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's a lot safer that way. It saves a lot of time and effort down the road.
Oh, you're not kidding. Now they have some strange questions on here that I don't really agree with, but they're on the survey, so I'll go
Okay,
ahead and
we
ask
can do
them.
them.
Have you ever accidentally walked in on a naked man?
Actually, had one walk in on me once.
Oh, yes, I know. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. So that yes, that has happened.
Well, that was the next question. Has anybody walked in on you? But have you walked in on a naked man?
Um,
Other than your whole locker room story, we don't count that. You already told that story, but
I kind of walked into that totally. Yes, I mean, if you're in a relationship, you certainly would, but just
yeah.
accidentally, walked into a no, not that I can really think of.
Okay.
I've
Well,
had the opposite happen, but
I'm guessing if you had, you would have remembered. So
oh, I would have remembered. I think obviously the locker room I do remember, but they were sort of I was there and then they were naked, so
yeah,
crazy. Anyway,
that's right. Okay, so the opposite of that question: has anybody ever walked in on you while you were naked?
uh, yes, but I
Just for
mean.
kicks. Just for kicks. You told me a story long ago, and we didn't plan to tell this story, so I'll probably be in trouble after the show. But there was
You
a
probably
time.
will be. Okay, what?
You don't have to give a lot of details if you don't want to, but there was a time you were on a boat and you went up, I think, to the top deck and you were sunning top free. I don't think you were naked. I think you were just top free, and
Hmm.
something happened. If you don't mind telling the story, but you don't have to identify the state or anything else if you don't want to.
Well, actually, the I was there. It was a group of people that were together for a weekend on a couple of houseboats,
Mhm.
and I ended up on a houseboat where there were only a whole bunch of guys. Don't
Oh,
ask how that happened.
I won't.
I was late getting to the boat I was supposed to be on with the person I was with, and they went, "Oh no, they took off already. Go!" And so I ended up on this boat.
Okay.
Anyway, I was the only gal. There's about 6 or 7 guys,
Mhm.
and I said, until we get to where we're going, I'm going upstairs and sunbathe. I actually did have a bikini on, and I did have the top loose, but I had it covering things.
Okay. Okay.
And I was trying not to be, I didn't know several of these guys, so I was just trying to be,
Yeah.
respectful.
Right.
So I actually apparently fell asleep. And suddenly, out of nowhere, those little air horn things,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
one of those went off. I jumped up rather abruptly. Top
Yeah.
went flying. There I am, totally naked on the
Uh,
top, and 6 guys lined up laughing their heads off.
oh wow. So all six had come up.
Yes, saw 60 come up. It was a joke, but I don't think they realized that my top was going to be undone.
True.
Yeah, so I think they were a little embarrassed about their actions, but
Yeah.
they sure as heck didn't move for a while. So anyway, so
Uh,
that was that was my claim to fame, I guess.
were they even able to speak at that point, or were they just mouths open and
Oh,
blank stares?
well, now, they were laughing, and then they were not laughing as much. So it was kind of a shock, like oh, so I have no idea what was going through their mind. I won't even consider what was going through their mind. But let's just say we were surprised on both sides. So yes, that qualifies me being naked in front of people
Yeah. Well, I guess so.
unexpectedly.
Yeah. Now, on the one hand, they went up there knowing minimally you were sunning in a bikini,
Yes.
so they knew that going in. So I don't know what they were expecting. Did they not expect to find you asleep? Was this ever discussed later on, or what?
No, I think they were too embarrassed to discuss it very much later
Okay.
on, and actually were very worried that I was going to tell somebody. So
Well,
so it was our little secret for a very long time. And it was all in good natured fun. I mean, there was nothing sinister or devious about it. They were trying to play a prank, and
yeah.
it sort of was a prank they weren't expecting the result from.
Yeah.
So
Now you knew some of the guys, but not
I knew
all of them.
some of them. Some of them I just met that weekend. It was a
Okay.
group of people from all over the state. So,
All right. So when it happened, what was your reaction? Were you frightened, or did you laugh it off? Did you know how to react? I guess that's the question.
well, you know how I am with very loud noises. So a loud noise, just if I'm sitting on the couch, I will
Right.
jump, for 3 feet in the air, startled. So I don't think my heart stopped pounding for probably 20 minutes from
Oh,
the
wow.
just from the sheer, like shock of it.
Yeah.
And then, and it took me a minute to realize what had happened
Sure.
when I realized that my top was laying on the deck, not
Oh, wow.
not where it was supposed to be, because I was leaning, reclined. So when I jumped up, that top, the was a halter thingy, and it just flew. So
Oh, okay.
there you go.
Well, that's another element to the story. I was actually going to ask that. Did the top kind of sort of stay on? But it sounds like it absolutely did not.
No, it went flying.
Yeah.
It was not a
So,
very big top, so
so you could say on that one day, you freed the nipple. In fact,
I
plural.
certainly did.
All right. So,
I'm not sure I did. Maybe they did, but anyway.
well, I guess, in accordance with the survey that we started off with here, I think you somehow, some way do qualify as a naturist slash nudist slash close to a living person. What do you think?
I think I may very definitely in some more ways than one sometimes.
Okay. Always great to talk to you. You're a big part of the show. And people love hearing from you. Our weekly correspondent, Lisa Monroe. Lisa, continue to be clothes free this week, and we'll see you on the next show.
Absolutely, Frank. You too.
All right.
And I hope everybody has a great week.
Yeah. You have a great day and a great week. I'll talk to you next time.
Okay, bye.
The terrific Lisa Monroe with us on every show. That rhymes. I didn't mean for it to. I am not a poet at all. We have poets in the naturist community who've written in before. We've read some of their work, but believe me, I am not a poet. But we enjoy having Lisa Monroe with us and a little inside baseball information here. When this show was first being planned out, Lisa Monroe was not a part of it. She is not a part of our regular staff here, so she wasn't involved in any discussions. And at some point I mentioned it to her, hey, we're looking at starting a naturism, nudism, naked, clothes-free, living for all the right reasons show. And she said, hey, can I be a part of it? I wasn't expecting that, but I immediately said, well, yes, absolutely. And we talked back and forth what would be the best role for her, how could we incorporate her on a weekly basis. And that's when we came up with Lisa Monroe, your weekly correspondent. So we are glad that it was her idea, glad she came up with the idea, and really glad that she can be with us and be with you every single week. Now, before we get to part two of my interview with the terrific naturist fiction author Will Forrest, I did want to read an email to you. This is from Scott. He is a regular contributor to the show. Congratulations on the big 1-0 episodes, Frank and Lisa. That's after episode 10, obviously. You were talking about men being able to take off their shirt at a beach or in public, doing a little digging. I found that it was only in the 1930s that it became more acceptable. In 1934 in Atlantic City, a group of 10 men protested the rule of being required to wear a top at the beach. The men were arrested, but later won the right to be shirtless at the beach. This opened the door for a change in attitude, but sadly only for men. I was also counting the 30 things to do while nude, and I got 19 out of 30, a fun little questionnaire, and yes, Lisa definitely passes that test. By the way, there is an International Read Naked Day on July 5th, among other naturist-themed days throughout the year. As for video games, check out Simon and Helen Berriman's Naked Retro Gaming channel on Vimeo. Great job as always, and keep up the good work. Always a nice part of my Saturday each week. Well, thank you, Scott. We appreciate that, and we appreciate you very much. You're listening to Naked, Nudist, and Naturist, episode 14 today. We really thank you for being with us. Let's get to part two now of my interview with the terrifically gifted writer and naturist fiction author, Will Forrest. Yeah, no, that's great. My part of my ancestry is from the country of Hungary, which is a fairly cold climate. It's northeastern Europe, I guess it would be. And I was told because my grandparents, my mother's parents, were born and raised in Hungary and came to the U.S. when they were maybe 20 or 25, as everybody did way back then. and they made their life here. But when I would go to their house, my grandfather almost never had any clothes on at all. My grandmother often did, and of course, at some point, I would ask. And it's kind of like my house. That's just how they did it in that country. The men just didn't wear clothes because they were always working, and they get more work done. They get more work done and at a quicker pace if they didn't have the restrictions of clothes. And the women were usually just in the house back then, cleaning the house, cooking in Hungarian meals if you ever had one. They cook all day and half the night, for your for your dinner. That's just what they did, and so that was very normal, even in a colder climate. And when they brought it here, it was still normal for them. They owned, farms, and they worked nude on the farm. And there were people, I went to school with, like, that's kind of odd, isn't it? I thought, no, there's nothing odd about that at all. So it's just funny how people grow up with their thoughts on this based on probably societal influence. As oh my gosh, they have their clothes off, something is wrong. You better run and hide, as opposed to the atmosphere I grew up in. Uh, your clothes being off is actually totally natural. Putting them on is unnatural. Are you seeing this more and more? Or did you see it back then, or you're seeing it more and more now?
That's an interesting example you gave from Hungary.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard anything similar to that. As a Latin Americanist, my focus tends to be on learning about the cultures of those countries, and so the indigenous cultures, above all, certainly went clothes free. The big you know the big conflict happened when the Catholic Spaniards and Portuguese show up, right, and they want to make everyone Catholic, and that includes putting clothes on. And so they brought this idea of body shame. The Europeans didn't even really take baths very regularly. The men had big long beards full of grease and food and stuff, and it was very nasty in comparison to the indigenous peoples who mostly bathed frequently and regularly. And so they wanted to dress them, and they didn't like the clothes at first, but then they started to feel this kind of sense of shame that was put onto them. And a lot of that still happens today with the textile industry and the fact that you have to look a certain way in your beach body. And, you know, I hear commercials like that on the radio still now and feel like we haven't progressed all that much.
No, no, and I don't know the percentage, but certainly a significant percentage has to do with the right kind of clothes, the right kind of makeup, the right kind of hair, the hair products, these salons, these stores. I don't know how many billions and gazillions of dollars are involved in that industry, but can you imagine if all that went away? If everybody said, we're not buying clothes anymore, just think of what that would do to the fashion industry. It'd be all gone, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and like I say, it's really helpful when someone. Well, you mentioned Lady Gaga, right? I mean,
Yeah.
she shows up at these special events with her dresses by the big name fashion producers and whatnot. But then she can go and make that kind of statement. That's always helpful to learn that someone like her wants to be in the nude.
Oh yeah, that's the only way she records, and my guess is if she could perform that way and get away with it, she probably would too, and maybe many of them would.
Yeah.
Now, what about your third book? We're talking to author Will Forrest here today. It's a book called Skinners. In the blurb, it says "Naked Pirates of the Caribbean." So let's take us through Skinners. What's this all about?
Yeah, that's exactly the elevator pitch for this book, and this one also was just a lot of fun. It started to come together in my mind, and um, I love the Pirates of the Caribbean films. They always have something supernatural in them, though. There's always like a ghost or a curse or a witch or something, and in these, I wanted to do something that was actually completely plausible. The most implausible part for most readers is the fact that most of the characters are nude.
Mhm.
And yet, when I looked into that, there were pirates who didn't need to be wearing clothes.
Right.
They were, kind of in the same way you were talking about your ancestry from Hungary, right? And how they would just work because it just made sense to not rip up your clothes. And then so the main character, Eddie Fife, is a young man from England who's on a merchant ship, but he witnesses an exchange, a mysterious exchange, and so he knows too much, and so they knock him out and they take him aboard this pirate ship where everyone is nude. And so he has this kind of like sudden reckoning into a world of nudism. But what happens is, as the novel goes along, there are other contexts that are explored for these kind of social nudist characters. And the other really main important context for this was the maroon communities, I think is what we call them in English. These were communities that were set up by people who escaped from slavery. I find this fascinating. These are
Oh,
people who, were dragged from West Africa against their will
yeah.
to the New World to work as a slave, right? And the ones that could escape would often, band together, set up a community somewhere in the middle of the woods or the jungle, and live on their own as much as they could. And there's no evidence that I know of that there were any maroon communities in real life that were nudist communities.
Hmm.
However, many of those people had living memory of, you mentioned National Geographic, had living memory of societies in Africa that they had grown up in where, women went top free, men were frequently naked, etc.
Right.
On the one hand. And on the other hand, many of them were escaping slavery. They were escaping precisely the picking of cotton to make clothes and things
Yeah.
like this. And so they would have had a number of reasons to, resist the European norm of wearing clothes, especially living on their own in the community in the forest. So I went with that idea. And, the Maroon community that the main character goes to is in fact a nudist community, although they don't use that word, right? Because we're in the 17th centuries, so they don't
Right.
use that word, right? But
Right.
yeah, that's a really fun book to write, and like I say, it's actually quite accurate historically.
Hmm.
The only difference is that the characters don't wear clothes, and yet
Right.
that may also have been something that happened.
To me, why wouldn't it? Why would it not have happened? You got a bunch of guys on a boat in the middle of the ocean working really hard. Being a pirate, at least as I understand it, was hard work. You were always doing something, and it's a lot easier to do without clothes. Especially lifting equipment or putting up the sails or whatever they were doing. To me, it would make perfect sense, and I'll bet they did. So I'm glad you're onto that. Now, is this the book to which you're writing a sequel? The Skinner's
Indeed.
book? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm working on a sequel to this one right now. I'm about halfway through, and they're just
Okay.
such fun characters in the fun setting that it's
Yeah.
it's it's really enjoyable. Hoping it can come out next year.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you about. When you start to write a book, do you set a target date in mind for release, or you just, I'm going to get that out of my mind. I'm just going to write, and when I'm done, I'm done.
So far, I haven't been setting target dates. Maybe if I become more prolific, I will. I
Yeah.
um, I do want to make sure that I mention some of my colleagues who are naturist fiction writers. I call them colleagues, but I mean
Yeah.
they're not my colleagues here at the university, but they're my colleagues in the field of writing naturist fiction. Some of them are quite prolific. And you mentioned a website. I have my own website, nudescribe.com, but then I also or help run a website called naturistfiction.org
Yeah,
with
that's the one. Yeah, I want to get into that, and that's where you do your anthologies, and also a couple other guys post their books as well.
right. So let's see. There's uh, Paul Walker, or PZ Walker, is very prolific. He's out of Holland, and he does oh my goodness, he does like a fantasy naturist series, sci-fi naturist. He wrote what we think is the first steampunk naturist novel. He's done a little bit of everything, and he and I, and also Robert Longpre out of Canada, who does more kind of like naturism from a psychological standpoint. We set up the website originally. Just recently, Robert stepped away from it, and he has a replacement in Ted Bunn. Ted is an Englishman who lives in France, and he runs a naturist bed and breakfast in France. He's also very prolific, and so the three of us now are contributing to the website. What we write for the website are kind of reflections about writing, or maybe short pieces.
Mhm.
Um, and we review each other's work, or the review of still more naturist writer works that are out there. I mean, there's an entire community, and something that you mentioned, the anthologies.
Yeah.
This has been terrific. This was an idea that Paul PZ Walker had originally. So Ted Bunn has done most of the organizing, and Ted and I edit them. And what we do is we put out a call, and the first one we did was called "Murder at the Nudist Colony."
Yeah.
And we chose the name Nudist Colony on purpose as a kind of a retro, tongue-in-cheek throwback. Although we continue to get complaints about that. We're not, we nudists don't live in colonies. We're like, we know we're
Yeah.
nudists too.
That's right.
Um, but that's the tongue-in-cheek title part of it. But so we had a lot of collaboration from that, and that was just so much fun. And the idea was that the profits from these anthologies all the profit goes directly to Doctors Without Borders. We
Wow.
decided we wanted to do some kind of charitable donation. It needed to be some kind of international organization because the writers come from several different countries or many countries. And like I say, it was so popular and fun. We did a second one, which was Romance in the Nudist Colony. A third
Mhm.
one, Holiday in the Nudist Colony, and then the fourth one came out just recently. We decided to break out of the Nudist Colony for that one. The title is called Adventures Without Clothes. So we've got murder, romance, holiday, and adventure. And some of the collaborators have just done outstanding work. It's terrific to have all of the collaborators. Some of them have been in every single anthology. Others have done one here, one there, whatever. But it's again, it's helped create this kind of community of naturist writers and readers. More
Yeah.
importantly,
Well, how do you find the writers, or how do they find you? If they have something they want to submit, do they just contact you, or do you put the call out? Hey, looking for an anthology, stories on whatever the topic happens to be.
yeah, for better or worse, what was until recently known as Twitter, I
Yeah.
guess X,
Yeah.
for better or worse, continues to be the kind of the best nudist platform
Okay.
because they allow nudity, but also it's just been, it's been around long enough that plenty of people have a presence there.
Mhm.
So I think maybe a couple of other outlets as well. I'm not sure exactly where all the call for stories goes out, but yeah. And we try to support a number of newer writers. Linda Weber comes to mind. She's an outstanding advocate from Anna West
Mhm.
for women in naturism.
Mhm.
She contributed a story for the second volume, Romance in News Colony, and continued to contribute since then. And she's been an excellent promoter of the anthologies in her social media sites.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I've seen her out there, and I talked to her before, and we've had her on the show. As far as what all that she does, which is a whole bunch. I don't know where she finds the time. I think she was, you and I are given 24 hours a day. I think she was given like 50 or 100. She
Yeah.
just doesn't tell anybody, but she's always out there and always writing. Now, when somebody comes to you and wants to submit a story, do you have a word limit or a word target in terms of numbers, or what do you look for?
Yeah, usually, sure. We give them an idea as far as word count. We give them an idea as far as this particular story has to do with adventure. So, or this anthology. So, your story needs to have characters in some sort of physical peril, right? And because it's a naturist anthology, they need to be naked, or they need to have some kind of experience where they need to get naked or something like that, right? Those we give them some basic guidelines. Um, yeah, and every once in a while, someone will contact us just out of the blue. There's a young man in Jamaica, Dale Harrison is his name, who's a budding writer, who he didn't catch the call for stories in time, but he reached out and said, "Hey, what can I do with this story?" So that's something else we do, is try to use the fact that we have a network to get names and titles and stuff out there and get them reviewed and get them known.
How often do you put out an anthology, or is there necessarily a plan for that? Is it just whenever something comes about as an idea, or how do you plan it?
Yeah, we didn't know we didn't know how successful it was going to be at the beginning.
Hmm. Hmm.
So the first ones came out fairly quickly. I don't know. I think we had about maybe a year turnaround between each of them, maybe
Hmm.
less. And then there was a little bit more time to the fourth one. We don't have a set plan as far as when they're going to come out. There's already been people asking about a fifth one, and Ted and I are both feeling like we should just take a little bit of a break from them for the moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, we may well do more in the future, and we'll just do the same thing. We'll put out a call on social media.
Okay. Now, before we move on, I want to talk to you a little bit about your own website you have out there. Just tell our listeners how they can find you, how they can find your books, how they can find these anthologies, anything you want to put out there, website wise, social media wise. How can people find Will Forrest and all the great things he's doing for the naturist community?
Thanks. Sure. So my website is nudescribe.com, and my Twitter handle is at nudescribe. And you can find all of my books and my collaborators' books on Amazon, and it's maybe some other sources as well, but Amazon is probably the easiest. If you go to my site, there are links to the different titles, my titles as well as the anthologies. The other site that I mentioned is naturistfiction.org. That's where we have collaborative, the three or four of us now at this point, have links to our books and reviews of other people's books and other information about naturism and about writing.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, that would be the best place to access them.
All right, let's talk about your work then on your own website, nudescribe.com. It says right at the top, Nudescribe, unencumbered musings on naturism, nudity, and the body. Well, that pretty much summarizes the whole thing, doesn't it, Will Forrest? And
Yeah,
yeah, what do you look to accomplish with your own website, other than obviously promoting your books? But you have a lot more going on there, right?
That's right. I set up the website and the Twitter handle back in 2011 when I made the decision to self-publish that first book.
Hmm.
And so there's quite a lot on there by now. That's 12 years ago. Um, and yeah, at the beginning it was mostly about promoting my own work, but yeah, it developed into a number of different areas. I recently reorganized the website and wanted to make some things easier to find. And so I put categories on the top of the screen, and you can find book reviews. You can find series, like I have a series, for example, of interviews with other naturist writers.
Hmm.
I have a series that I wrote last year that was more, or I guess it was last year, yeah, more kind of meditative about the figure of the green man. The green man is a kind of a uh, almost a kind of a father nature instead of a mother nature, a father nature figure from Northern Europe. And so I did some kind of more meditative pieces about the green man and how that relates to naturism. So yeah, there's a variety of different kinds of writings on there.
At the top, you have a number of uh, subcategories with drop down menus. And one of them I noticed is theater. And when you click on theater, it drops down and you have looks like a play. Are these plays that are out there now, or the one I'm thinking about is actually Bodies on the Beach? That might be the only one that's there right now. Bodies on the Beach. Is this something you wrote, or is it something that's been staged, or what's that all about?
Yeah, it is. It is the one thing that I have in that drop down category.
Yeah.
I would love to come back and write more theater at some point. That particular idea just kind of came to me, and so I wrote that piece. To my knowledge, it hasn't been staged. I would hope if it were staged, someone would let me know. But yeah, it's just a brief kind of meditation where the four characters are named somebody, anybody, nobody, and everybody, and they're on a beach, and they gradually, the characters gradually become convinced to move to the nude side of the beach. But yeah, it was just a fun kind of experimental theater piece that I wrote.
I was talking to somebody who stages a lot of plays in New York, and some of them are nudist plays, naturist plays, a lot of nudity, sometimes full nudity. The whole play is done in the nude. And they said that I would be amazed if I were to come back to New York, just exactly how many plays involve nudity. Are you aware of this? I wasn't aware of it until recently. There are a lot of plays out there. They just don't get the publicity that something else like Mary Poppins would get. Is that something you're familiar with on your end?
Yeah, to an extent, sure. A play that has a lot of nudity, right, isn't gonna receive the same kind of marketing that a Disney musical would.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, there's a lot of fringe theater or specialized kind of niche theater that involves a lot more nudity. Yeah,
Okay.
that's true.
One of my fairly new friends in the naturist community went to see a play called Naked Boys Singing. It's literally men coming on stage and singing. I mean, the title says it all. And she went with her husband. She said it's like the most amazing thing ever. Like no body shame, no insecurity. Just here I am naked and I'm singing, kind of like the Lady Gaga thing, except it was live on stage. And it wouldn't be great if we had more like that to promote our cause here.
I happened to see a production of that
Oh
as
yeah.
well when I was in London a number of years ago, and yeah, it's. I mean, it was. I think there were parts of it that were fairly sexual, but
Okay.
but sure, it was fun. It was definitely, I would agree with the person's statement that it was a complete lack of body shame on the part of these actors, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I had a long time ago. I had a subscription to a university, their theater. They would put out a play roughly one a month or so during the school year. And I got that and went on I think it was a Friday night or Saturday night was my subscription. And they were, college plays. I shouldn't say that. They were professional plays put on by college students seeking their masters, their MFAs. So they were full time theater majors. In fact, I met a couple of them later, and one of them said, "Yeah, they pay for everything. They pay for your schooling, your books, your costumes, your housing, your food, but they own you for 3 years. When they call, you better come running." So, one of those. But during one of the plays, there was a woman sitting with a guy. They were just sitting out front, toward the front of the stage, and she was trying to seduce him, verbally, and that wasn't working. And then she just removed her top. She had a dress on. She just pulled the dress down and her bare breasts were showing. And of course, people just went crazy. Like, you have to be kidding. This is a college, it's a university. We can't have this. And I thought, based on how the play was written and the moment in the story, it was actually If she hadn't lowered her top, it would have been I would have been on the opposite end, like, why didn't she take her top off? That's what the scene called for. But some people still have issues with that. Have you seen that before? Just regular, I'll just call them regular plays in the world where there is a little nudity because the nudity applies to the exact scene at that exact moment.
Yeah, not so much in colleges. I have been involved with community theater, and I know that some actors are told that even though they're community theater actors, if there's a scene that requires nudity, they should make sure that they're at least getting paid for it, because that's a
Yeah,
an extra step, for a
yeah,
lot of people who wouldn't normally be comfortable with it. You're making me remember that a couple years ago I was in New York and saw with my family the Broadway production of the Disney musical Frozen,
yeah.
and I wrote about it on my website because it was so curious that if you've seen the movie, there's a really brief scene. It takes place in what, Sweden, maybe, or Norway, Scandinavia. There's a brief scene with a sauna in the musical. There's an entire musical number where they are the actors are supposed to be naked, but you can tell they're wearing bodysuits.
Wow.
But they're in a chorus line. They're kicking and dancing, and they've got these sprigs of, like, whatever the herb is that they're using in the sauna. They've got these
Mm.
sprigs that they choreograph their movements so that they're covering this person's, the person to the left, they're covering their top, and then the person to the right is covering their groin area. They had and it was this entire production about how wonderful it is to get into the sauna.
Yeah,
And I thought, this is really interesting. This is a Disney family production
yeah,
with this nudist message.
yeah,
So, I was prompted to write about it because when a big company like Disney does something like that, kind of makes you pay attention.
yeah. That's for sure. I think the most interesting experience I ever had when my daughter was in high school. She was a big wheel in theater. That was one of her big things. Wasn't the star of every play because they didn't like to spread the love around, but she was basically the star and everybody knew it. Just one of those natural hams on stage. And she had the lead in Oklahoma, of all things. You're living in Oklahoma. There was a
Mhm.
musical, and there was a guy 1 year younger. So she was a senior, I think, and he was a junior. And it was a magnificent play. They were just phenomenal. And he was also a natural, gifted theater guy. Well, fast forward maybe 3 or 4 years or so, that college subscription I told you about, believe it or not, on campus, they did the full Monty, which involves male nudity at the end and scantily clothed men in a couple scenes during the play. And the seats, because the subscription that I had was for the graduate theater, which is a very professional, almost, I don't want to say theater in the round because they didn't go all the way around, but maybe three quarters around, padded seats. It was just a gorgeous theater. But for the full Monty, they opened it up to the undergraduate and graduate students. And because they anticipated a bigger audience, they moved it to a different theater, which was much bigger, much older, not as nice seats. And the seats they gave us for our subscription were the front row. And I typically didn't sit that close because you can't take the whole ambiance of the theater or the stage in if you're too close. But okay, we're first row, here we go. And the play started, and the first guy to come out on stage was this guy who had been in the high school play with my daughter. And I thought, you have to be kidding. I'm going to see this. Well, he wasn't a kid anymore. He was probably 22 years old. I'm going to see this guy who used to be a kid, who used to be on stage with my daughter, and he's going to be naked. That was my first reaction. And of course, yeah, that's exactly what happened. And then after the play, they have a reception line in the lobby, and it's, David, great job. He goes, I'm kind of embarrassed that you're here, but thank you. So even in situations like that where you're on stage naked, you see somebody in the audience, oh my gosh, what do I do now? But he carried it off like a pro. And but I guess that happens from time to time. If you're going to get naked on stage, you never know who's going to be in the audience, right?
Yeah, and that's very telling that they decided to, because of that play, they
Yeah,
decided to go to a bigger venue. They decided to
yeah,
open up to more people because they
yeah.
knew that they would be interested. What does that say?
Exactly.
You go to that play,
Yeah.
and you know that it's all about, oh, I'm going to get to see people naked on stage, and that pulls people in, and you think, wow, kind of as naturists, we want to celebrate that people are open to seeing nudity on stage, but we also would feel like it shouldn't be a big deal. It shouldn't be a big draw, right? and yet, unfortunately, it is.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting. The Graduate Theater probably held 300 people in the audience. It's kind of an intimate theater. And this one for the Full Monty probably held about 1,500, and it was filled. And you're right. What does that say? People actually want this level of presentation on the stage, and they're not afraid of it. They crave it. They want it. They just can't get enough. At least that's my view, and it sounds like it might be your view as well.
Yeah, they or at least they feel comfortable seeing it on a stage, but they're in a particular location, in a particular place and time, and they bought their ticket for it. They don't want to necessarily go out into the street and see it, right? Or
Right,
they
right,
would feel uncomfortable if
right.
it were a different environment. That's the unfortunate part of it, I think. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're in this together, and we're working on this whole naturism deal together. And it's been great to talk to you today. We've been talking to Will Forrest from Oklahoma, a naturist fiction writer. And we want you to check out his website, which I'll have him give in a moment. He has a personal website where everything is on there, including a blog. And then his naturist fiction website, he runs with a couple of other guys. They have some anthologies. He has some books out there too. And Will, you're a champion for naturism slash nudism slash being naked, I guess, whatever we want to call it, clothes-free living for all the right reasons is what we call it here. But it's all the same. So just before I let you go, tell our listeners again how they can find you, put out your websites, your social media, whatever you want them to know about you and how to find you. Go right ahead.
thanks again, Frank, and thanks for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. It's always great to connect with more folks, and so your podcast is a terrific venue for doing that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm at Nudescribe, Nudescribe, on Twitter. My site is nudescribe.com. And then the other site that I run collaboratively is naturistfiction.org, all one word, naturistfiction.org. And all of my books and the anthologies that several of us have written collectively are available on Amazon.
All right. Again, great to talk to you. As I mentioned a moment ago, you're a champion for the whole cause, whatever we call it, clothes-free living. It sounds like you kind of lean toward the word nudism as opposed to naturism, or are they both interchangeable, or how do you see it?
No, I definitely lean more toward naturism.
Okay.
For me, nudism is kind of like, I'm going to go out to the park and just hang out by the pool. Naturism is being a bit more active, the kind of things I like to do, like swimming and hiking and actually being out in nature. Yeah, I lean
Yeah.
more toward naturism.
Yeah, I've gotten to the point where I almost don't care what anybody calls it, as long as they're enjoying clothes-free living for all the right reasons and taking it in for the value that it brings to us. But it's been great to talk to you. Again, author Will Forrest. Check him out, nudescribe.com, and also the naturistfiction.org, naturistfiction.org. And tell us again, what's your handle on Twitter?
At Nudescribe.
Perfect.
Nudescrib.
You got it. Again, author Will Forrest, thank you, sir. Go out there and have a great day, and let's definitely get together again soon.
Thanks, Frank. Looking forward to it.
You bet. Thank you. The terrific Will Forrest, a gifted writer, a terrific naturist fiction author. Check him out, nudescribe.com, and also naturistfiction.org. And we thank Will Forrest for all of his time on this show. Well, you've been listening to Naked Nudist and Naturist, episode 14. We really thank you for being with us. We love being with you. We love that you are with us. We are in this community together, helping each other live the clothes-free life for all of the right reasons. So what are you going to do today? Whatever you're going to do today, clean the garage, work in the house, maybe go to work, maybe enjoy the beach or the pool, or something else, we hope you do it clothes-free, physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. The benefits are over the top great, but you already know that, because we are one and the same, living the clothes-free life. Well, thank you for listening to Naked Nudist and Naturist today, episode 14. We give you a brand new show every Saturday morning at 6 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time. Continue to join us. Check us out on our website, nakednudistandnaturist.com, Spotify, Google, Amazon/Audible, Apple Podcasts, and also on Twitter. You can write us anywhere, anytime, any place. And we thank you for being with us today. Plan to join us for every single one of our shows here, and have your clothes off when you're listening. We have our clothes off when we're broadcasting, enjoying the naturist life.
We celebrate clothes-free living for all. Remember to enjoy being naked and join us again for Naked Nudist and Naturist.
We drop a brand new show every Saturday morning, so come back and join us. Have your clothes off when you do for Naked, Nudists, and Naturists. Have a great clothes-free day.